What is up, guys? It is your boy NCSO7 here. Welcome to another review video. Today I'm going to be reviewing Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade, or Fire Emblem 7, or Fire Emblem the Blazing Sword, or Fire Emblem GBA, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to just call it Blazing Blade because that's what I know it as, and nothing's going to stop me. So, yeah, I'm going to be reviewing this game. I went through this game earlier this month, and now I kind of want to talk about it, so let's go right into it. Starting off with the presentation of this game. Now, I do believe that this was the first Fire Emblem game to get released in the West, so it is a bit of a different game because at the time, most people in the West didn't know what tactical RPGs were, but I still think that this game does a pretty good job at actually showing what it is, because if you don't know what Fire Emblem is, tactical RPG, defeat all the enemies on the board, and pretty like some other objectives sometimes. That's pretty much it. But even so, though, the game is still really solid looking, and even like graphically for like the GBA, it looks really good. Now, to be fair, I did play this game on the Wii U Virtual Console, so it was blown up on a 4K TV, but I still think the game looks really solid, especially like character portraits and like some of the cutscenes. Like, yeah, definitely, like, it's still the Game Boy Advance, so it's like 32-bit and whatnot, but I still say the game looks really solid, honestly, and I think it looks good. And the story. So now moving on to the story of the game, segue. Now, I'm not going to go too far into the story, but basically there's like a kind of three different stories from like three of the main lords, which I'll get into them more so in a second. But the game starts off with the first 12 chapters being about Lynn, who's trying to reach her grandfather and whatnot, and comes across various allies along the way. And then you eventually move on to Elwood's story, or Hector's story, where in Elwood's story's case, he has to try and find his father, but then it kind of spirals into war, and then there's all this other stuff about dragons and whatnot, and I'm not going to go too far into that because spoilers, even though the game's like almost 20 years old. And Hector's story, I don't know because I haven't played his mode. I haven't played on hard. Sorry. I only played through the game once, but yeah, the story of the game, I'd say overall is pretty alright. It's not the best story ever, but it has its strong moments, and I really do like that. As well, and of course, characters, which honestly is one of the biggest things about Fire Emblem. That's why I love Three Houses so much, is not because of the story, but the characters. So, what about Fire Emblem Blazing Blade? Does it have good characters? Yes, it does. Now, I'm not going to talk about too many of them, but I will talk about the three main lords, that being Elwood, Lynn, and Hector. Elwood, he's fine. I don't know. He's kind of just a generic, like, good boy protagonist. He's not a bad character by any means, but, like, he really is generic since, I mean, people mistake him for Roy, like, all the time. So, yeah, not the most original. Lynn, I'm sure a lot of people crushed on her back when they first played the game when they were a kid, but even so, Lynn is alright. I think she's kind of overrated if I'm going to be completely honest, but she's still fine. Hector, I'd say, is probably my favorite out of the main three lords. Hector is just funny. He's a badass, pardon the language, and really cool. He's a good character. He feels more like a character rather than just the protagonist, which I really like. But yeah, the characters wise, and even aside from them, there's a lot of good characters and whatnot, and some good supports and whatnot. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than it's pretty solid. Now moving on to the gameplay. So, like I mentioned before, it's a tactical RPG, kind of similar to chess, I guess you could say. I've actually never played chess before, though, but basically you move allies around on a map and you have to have them engage with enemies. You try and get them to kill all the enemies on a board, but you also want to make sure you don't place an ally right into danger's ways, otherwise they die. And this is the game that does not have that has permadeath and no option to just have them retreat like the other games. No casual mode, which is kinda sad. I know people like permadeath because it makes it feel a lot more worthwhile, but I just find it annoying because as somebody who doesn't want any of my allies to die, it's just annoying. I don't like that. Please, I'm begging you. I don't know. I'm someone who doesn't care for it, and if you do like it, that's perfectly fine. Well, this game's completely for you, but I still would like an option. Option is fun. And then we got, and then a little more of a complaint sort of thing, is that there's nothing to do in between battles. Like, This is mostly because I play the newer games, like I play Fates and Three Houses, where after like a specific battle in those games, you'll actually go back to a various hub world and you can do various activities before the next battle. I actually really like that because it kind of gives you a little break from the main gameplay. This game, Blazing Blade, does not do that. You go from battle to battle to battle. Heck, so much so that supports take place on the battlefield, which took me a bit to get used to, but even so, I kind of just wish that there was a little pit stop or something like that, so that way you can catch your breath and then you can go through supports and stuff like that. I would really prefer something like that, honestly. It's kind of a shame that this game doesn't have that, because it just makes it feel like it keeps going and going and going. But whatever, though. Still, though, I do think that like the sports in the game are rather solid, and the gameplay's still good, although it doesn't hold up as well as the other games, if I'm going to be completely honest. Well, it's still fun and whatnot. It does have some annoyances, like there's no battle forecast for who's going to win or lose. Like in the newer games, you can kind of get an idea right before you attack, like who gets hit, like the projected forecast of who loses damage and whatnot. You know what I mean. You don't have that in this game, so you kind of got to play it by ear. And by that I mean check all the enemy danger ranges, which in Three Houses, there's like a button where you can just toggle all of the danger area for like the enemies. This game, you don't. You have to just kind of select them one by one and just memorize which spaces they occupy, so that way you can move your allies accordingly if you don't want them to be put in danger's way. I think there are even a couple of times where I put an ally in a spot that I thought was actually safe, then the boss goes right to that spot and kills him, just like that, making me restart my save, which is super annoying. Maybe there's a button or something like that, but I didn't find it. Even so, though, it's kind of annoying, but it's whatever. It's still a fine game, though. I actually really like some of the animations in the battles as well, when the characters attack and whatnot, but still, it can be a little irritating, to be honest, but whatever. Gameplay-wise, it's good, but definitely not as good as it could be. Definitely not compared to the later games, which is fine since this is an older game, but still, I feel like it's worth mentioning. Now moving on to controls, I had no issues with controls moving forward. To content now, I mean, the game kind of goes for various prices. I bought it on the Wii U Virtual Console for like $7 or something like that. Though if you want to get a physical copy of the game, it's like $90. So yeah, I'd say get it on the Wii U Virtual Console if you want to get it officially, as like $7 is plenty. The game's around like 20 hours or something like that in terms of length, so yeah, I'd say it's pretty much worth it. And the soundtrack in the game is really good too. And yeah, it's a Game Boy Advance soundtrack, so it does sound somewhat compressed, but I like the music of the game. I think it's rather solid. But yeah, I don't really have much to say. The music's pretty good. And now moving on to my final thoughts. Oh yeah, also Indian Best Girl. I think Blazing Blade is a pretty solid game. I definitely would say that it's not my favorite Fire Emblem game. I definitely know why a lot of people like it. The characters are really solid. The gameplay was pretty unique for its time. The game looks pretty good. The story's actually not too bad. It's just that some of the gameplay things are kind of annoying and don't hold up the best when you compare them to the newer games. Though that is an unfair comparison, so I'll give it that. This game was original and whatnot, although there were like 6 games beforehand that did this too, but you know what I mean. Regardless though, Blazing Blade is still a pretty solid game, and on my scale from 0 to 10, I give Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade a solid 7.8 out of 10. Just too much enemy range. Jokes aside, I think the game is really solid, and I really would recommend that you play it at some point, possibly before Engage comes out, but I don't know, you do you, I suppose. But those are my thoughts on the game. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below what you think of this game, and if you like this video, then hit the like button and subscribe for more stuff, because I'm inevitably going to make more Fire Emblem content in the future. Get ready for it. And yeah, so I will see you guys next time. Peace out and take care.